You know, I'll tell you, when I remember teachers, when you look back to the world of your teachers, I remember one teacher in my school who was the arty type. You know what the arty type lady is, very leathery faced. She always had a tan, and she loved arty type kids. You know, there's always that type of teacher, and Miss McCullough, she loved arty type kids, and certain kids in this class, which happened to be English, certain kids in this class got hip to that very quickly. And so I knew one kid who was a total chowderhead. And in fact, Jack Morton, he was a fake all the way, but he had a fantastic profile. He was an elegant-looking kid. But Jack Morton was truly what I would call crafty. Have you ever met a crafty person? That's not quite the same as shrewd. Crafty is even sneakier than shrewd. Well, Morton one day, we're sitting over in the Red Rooster, seeing Morton used to have terrible time in school. So Morton is sitting there, and because he was a dilettante. Morton was born to have a monocle. You know what Morton was? Morton Reedy was a high school George Plimpton. You know, kind of an elegant type, and his schoolwork just interfered with his life, which was very rich and full. He had a fantastic collection of cashmere sweaters, and he used to wear his chinos with such an elegance. And he had this Ford which he had painted and had cut down. He was a very elegant kid, and he came from a family that could afford this elegance. He later went to a excellent Eastern prep school and all that. So Morton is sitting in the class there and having a tough time. And we went over to the Red Rooster one day, and we're sitting in the Red Rooster having our hot roast beef sandwiches and knocking down our Coke, which you had lunch over there all the time. There were certain kids who always, I'm gonna have to give you a confession here. Have you noticed that I never talk about the school cafeteria? I have never mentioned the high school cafeteria. We had a cafeteria in high school, and I never have mentioned that in any of my shows. That's because I never once, in all the 4 years I went to high school, ate in the school cafeteria. That all of us kids, there were a certain group of kids who always ate out. We would go down the street to the Red Rooster. We would go down to Jack's joint down there where they had these cheeseburgers. We'd go down to the Igloo. And little realizing I was already committing myself to the life of an outsider, All the rest of the kids, about 5,000 kids, are sitting in the cafeteria. And I never once, not once, it's amazing when I think about it now, not one time did I eat in the cafeteria. Well, we're sitting at the Red Rooster one day, and Morton, of course, has got his elegant cashmere sweaters on and his elegant. He used to get his jeans and his chinos were. He never had a pair of jeans or a pair of chinos that had anything. They were all beautifully faded. Everything was just right. The clothes hung great on Morton. He just, that kind of guy. Oh, he's just on top of it. So Morton is sitting there, and he said, "What are you worrying about English for?" Schwartz was worrying about English. Schwartz was a born mole. When you think of people in connection with animals, I've always known, of course, what kind of an animal I am, and I suspect that you know what kind you are. But every person I knew had a certain parallel in animals. Schwartz was a mole. Schwartz was a mole. He was underground. He also a beaver. He worked hard. And so when an assignment was given, Schwartz, even though it was incomprehensible to him, would sit there for weeks and try to figure it out and work away and sweat. Well, the crafty type doesn't do that. I mean, Jack Morton was the elegant. What kind of an animal was he? Well, he was a combination of a bird of paradise, a peacock, which, by the way, is the male of the species. He also moved a little bit like a cougar. He was a mover, because he later went on, by the way, to become a very famous fighter pilot and all that. He did it all, At the age of 19, he's a major. 500 battle citations. Oh, fantastic. Mustache. He smoked these elegant meerschaum pipes. So Morton is sitting there in the Red Rooster, and he says, "What are you worried about English for?" What do you mean? What am I worried about? I can't understand all this stuff about what is all this. What do you understand anything about Julius Caesar? We're reading the Shakespeare and all that stuff. He says, "Oh, that's not to worry. It doesn't matter whether you learn anything about Shakespeare. It's ridiculous material that we're given to read. The thing to do is to learn about Miss McCullough." Schwartz says, "What, huh?" Yes. So there's still ways to handle her. And so a couple of days later, Morton biding his time, and the class is moiling around, everybody's raising their hands, people are getting up and reading stuff like Lady of the Lake and that kind of jazz. Morton's saying nothing, and suddenly he raises his hand. He says, Miss McCullough." She says, "Yes, Jack." So Jack had not yet made his mark in this class. He was an unknown factor. This is the moment, though, of mark-making. He says, "Miss McCullough, I'd like to ask your opinion of Ambrose Bierce. I have my opinion, but I'd like to ask yours." Wait, wasn't a kid in the class ever heard of Ambrose Bierce? Not one kid in the class. We just sat there stunned. Here we were sitting here talking about Sir Walter Scott's Lady in the Lake, and he said, "I'd like to ask your opinion of Ambrose Bierce. I have mine. I'm just curious what yours is." Miss McCullough lit up like an elderly Christmas tree. If you have ever seen a lady in her dotage in an ecstatic fit, you know then what Miss McCullough... She just glowed. She said, "Well, it's very interesting. I'm really delighted you asked about Ambrose. But class, do any of you know who Mr. Bierce was?" Silence. Jack's just sitting there stroking his elegant chin. He says, "Well, for the benefit of those of you who don't know, Ambrose Bierce was quite probably the leading American satirist of the late 19th century. A man who created an entire world of satire, and as a matter of fact, his Devil's Dictionary still remains a minor classic in its field. When I wrote my doctorate thesis on Ambrose Bierce, I will never..." And he's sitting back there quietly stroking his chin. He hit her right in the belly button. You know that, don't you? Where he found out that she wrote her doctoral thesis on Ambrose Bierce, I'll never know. But from that minute on, there's just no way Jack Morton could do wrong in his class. No way. No way. In fact, Morton took to not even showing up. From time to time, we'd meet him at the Red Rooster during, immediately following English class. We'd meet him at the Red Rooster, and he's already on his third or fourth Coke. He'd say, "How was class today?" And I remember Schwartz saying, "Oh, you." One of the rare times I heard Schwartz ever swear. And Morton says, "Hey, you see, this is a matter of knowing people. Right from the start there, guys, I don't have to tell you what this guy is now, today. I mean, don't think for a minute that he was a failure in later life. He was not. He went on to bigger and better things, and today, Miss McCullough wouldn't even be able to get an appointment with him if she showed up at his elegant office with a carpet that was 6 feet deep. Remember the way he said that? It was just a certain way. Miss McCullough, would you please give me your opinion of Ambrose Bierce? I have mine, but I'm just curious what you think of Ambrose Bierce." And the old lady stood there for a second. Hairpins dropped out of her bun on the back. I mean, just because of pure electronic magnetism. And it was all the way down the skids for old Jack Morton from that minute on. There was no problem.